there, I'm Mary Houle. I'm gardening, coming straight to you from Richmond, Vermont. Richmond is a solid zone 4, and this is where I've gardened all my life so far. Today I'm going to talk about vegetables that you harvest in the fall. I'm going to talk about the ones that I don't have here first, just because they were too heavy to bring in. Now, the ones that you would be harvesting now are pumpkins, they're squash, they are beets, and let's see, what else do I don't have carrots, and carrots. I do have some onions, for examples, and I have potatoes, and I don't have the garlic. But the reason you start harvesting them now is you want them to cure. And if you pick a cucumber that's tiny, it will shrivel before it ripens. If you pick a squash let's say you pick a squash in early August, it's going to disintegrate. It's not going to come to its fullest potential. It needs to stay on the vine for a certain length of time to get the right amount of sun, to get water, and just the length of time for the season. It needs to fully mature. The typical squash that I would think around here would be an acorn, a butternut, or a buttercup squash. Those are nice size, easy to harvest. Delicata is another relatively new squash to me. And again, as a new squash, there's a lot of hype for not so much squash. When you cut the delicata, I would tend to roast it, or I would put it into parboil. I tend to steam just about all my vegetables. What you get is about a ½ inch of flesh inside the rind. And to me, I don't think I'm going to grow delicata on a regular basis. They're pretty, they're nice to use for decoration, and they do have a nutritional value, but to me, they're just not worth the time. Another squash to me that is just brilliant, and I don't know who developed it, but it's awesome, and that's the spaghetti squash. Now, spaghetti squash, probably most of you know what that is. You can harvest that in maybe the 3rd week of August and right through late September until there's a frost. You want to get them in before there is a freeze. A freeze will spell the end to your hard work, because once one of these items, a squash, a pumpkin, gets something that's called frost shoulders, unless you use it within 24 hours, it starts to degrade and disintegrate, and it will just rot. Frost shoulders you'll recognize by number one, you'll see the forecast on the night before and say, well, it's going to be 20 degrees tonight. Freeze warnings are in effect. And so in the morning when you go out and you go, oh, I didn't cover anything up, or I didn't harvest things, you'll notice actually the top and over the shoulder of, let's say, the pumpkin, that up to about a third of it is covered with a almost transparent ice. And it's in the flesh, but you look at that and you go, something's not right. And it's more obvious on a spaghetti squash, because a spaghetti squash is so light in color that when the frost shoulders hit those, it's just so much easier to see. Now, the same thing is true if you have an apple orchard. Once the frost freeze sets in, a couple successive nights of freezing will give you something called a water core. And those apples have to be processed fast because they will rot from the inside out. So paying attention to your seasons, even though we're zone 4 here in Richmond, Vermont, sometimes you get a longer growing season, and sometimes the growing season is abbreviated. So just pay attention to what they say on the weather. I guess they get paid those big bucks for something. So what I do have here to show today is an example of a potato harvest. Now, this potato harvest, there's many different sizes that came out of this hill of potatoes, and this is one of the casualties. This is what happens when you put your fork too close to the potatoes. It went right through the potato. Now, I can still wash this potato, but I would use it right away. This is not something I would ever store. Anything that has a blemish or a chip taken out of it as a result of the harvest, take it right out of the storage area. This is an example of one that you wouldn't store or eat. This is an example of one that has sunburn. Now, I don't know specifically that this comes from the sun, but this was dug up, and it's entirely possible that when this was growing, that it was growing close to the surface, and that it did get that sun hit on it. And there's something that develops in this that is not good for you. So don't eat a green potato of any kind. Oh, here's another green one. Great, another green potato. So these automatically, I'm going to pitch into the compost pile. They can stay there, and if the turkeys or wild animals want it, they can have them. It won't affect them like it would me. So this is an example of one hill of potatoes where I put in one potato. I had 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, about 15 potatoes out of it. Yeah, we lost a couple to the fork and to the sun, but that's all right. That's still a pretty good harvest from one potato. So to get this potato ready for storing, when I was a kid, we used to just let them, my father would let them dry on burlap bags. We had burlap bags for grain for the cows. So they would be on a burlap bag out in the yard, usually on some raised timbers. There would be burlap under and there would be burlap over. You put the burlap over so that the sun will not affect the potatoes to end up with a green potato. And it worked pretty well. After they were totally dry, so that when you picked them up, it was just dust that came off to them. There was no wet part at all. We crated them down to the basement and put them in potato bins. Now, I'm old. These potato bins were platforms that hung from the ceiling. Dad just built them out of rough lumber, never finished lumber, because the airflow is so much better, and you don't subject any of your potatoes to any treatment that any wood might have. So once the potatoes were dry, didn't have to knock off the soil, just brought them into the basement, put them one level. You didn't put them on top of each other because they tend to, if there was any moisture that got in or wasn't totally extricated, as the potatoes touch each other, they tend to disintegrate, mold, and a rotten potato really doesn't smell good. This is another example of a hit that got severed by the fork. So you want to be careful when you're digging them. But still, that's a pretty good yield, and just losing 4 potatoes isn't bad. So if I was to use this potato right away, I would take it out into my rain barrels, and I would scrub off the soil outside, and I would not even bother peeling it because there's not much to the peel. Once it has dried, the peel tends to thicken up a little bit. So these are not ready to store yet. They're ready to set and dry. This container I did not steal. Somebody gave me this container. But this is a good to air dry. You would only do 1 layer. Again, that's a lot of container for a few potatoes. But you don't want the potatoes sitting on one another. They're not going to dry sufficiently. So you want to set the potatoes so that they will dry. If you're going to store them, try to store them in, let's say a pasteboard box. This would be a great place to store potatoes. It's got some ventilation. This is a typical Costco box. But you'd put 1 layer of potatoes down and then set it so that the air can get in, obviously, to these spots. Air is important, not light, not water. But air is important so that the circulation diminishes the chance of mold occurring. Other things that are ready to harvest this time of year, I didn't bring in garlic, but this is an example of how you would harvest garlic. You dig up your garlic and you braid the garlic tops. And you set the garlics offset a little bit so that you have you don't have all the garlics clumped up, but you set them apart from each other a little bit. Take off the roots, of course. For show, I'll take a couple off. And these, of course, are bunching onions, but this is just an example how you would use them. Bunching onions don't store that well, but if you took onions out of the garden, you would braid the tops. Again, the garlic heads would be alternate. They wouldn't all be together because that's how you're going to take them off. If you want to take off a garlic, you're going to take off the lowest. But you would braid the tops, braid, and then hang them up like that. I'm sure you've seen them in fall markets where they're quite attractive to look at. They're decorations, but they're also viable harvest. And again, you would keep the garlic hanging. I would keep it in a cool, dry place, not necessarily in your kitchen, because if it's in the kitchen near heat, it's going to continue to dry out, and that kind of diminishes the quality. You want the garlic to be a little bit supple when it's time to use it. Now, another example of something that I just acquired was a new set of strawberry plants. They were a gift, and I got maybe 25 plants, and this doesn't look like much, but this is going to be a great producer for next year, and I've only slightly let it dry. I will be hydrating it as soon as I bring it back home, But this is the time of year when you would pay attention to the strawberries that are in the garden. I know some people that are much more comfortable with their strawberry patch will just put their mower on high and go right through the patch. I'm not quite that brutal. I tend to separate them by hand and dig them out when I want to transplant them. So this was a recent transplant, and this was a daughter plant this year. And a daughter plant comes from the mother plant, but this plant was created from the mother plant, and this will give you fruit next year. The mother plant will continue for a couple years. She'll send out daughter plants and fruit, but the mother plant will exhaust after a couple of years, and then you'll have the daughter plants, which become the mother for the next generation. So now's a good time to take a look at your strawberry patch if you have them. I don't think anybody's selling strawberries this time of year, but if you have a neighbor that says, I'm thinning out my strawberries, be first in line on their porch. So strawberries are a good thing to take a look at for putting into an area. They only compete negatively with clover. Clover tends to harbor a bug of some sort that doesn't mind eating all your strawberries. So do not mix clover with strawberries. I thought that would make a great ground cover one year until I learned about it through the Master Gardener program. They said, oh, no, don't put clover with strawberries. So you live, you learn, even me. So when you store your vegetables, your carrots, I think carrots you want to shake off the dirt because they'll last longer. You store those in a cool, dry, dark place. It would be nice, like that box I showed you, to have some air circulation, to set them on a wire rack. I know that they sell these wire racks for Closet Made and other things, and you could put up a couple racks. Costco sells the wire shelves in, I think they're 4 shelves. Anyway, it's reasonably priced, and the wire racks you set up so that there's a good 16, 18 inches between the shelves, and you can air dry a lot of things. Put that in your basement, put it in the garage, put it where you don't have a lot of sunlight, put it where it's cool and dry, and you should end up having some harvest. You can also put your pumpkins and squash on that same rack. Now, when you go through the, let's say you're going into Thanksgiving time, that's about the time you want to be harvesting some of your squash, and only the hardiest of them will last into and beyond the winter. I have had good luck with that, but I tend to start using up my squash, either dehydrate it or cut it into chunks and put it in the freezer, because once it's frozen, it's just a snap to cook. So it's worth the effort that you put into your garden all year. It's worth going out into the garden, and if you haven't already harvested the onions, you'll still find some out there. The garlic, there's still some out there. Potatoes, as you see, this is the result of one hill. And carrots are just the prettiest little things, and they're so sweet this time of year too. That's it for now for Vegetable Fall Harvest. Thank you for watching. Happy gardening.